people who know you best can also hurt you worst, but when our story began, I never imagined I would be the blade in my own back. Cassie Hartley and I had grown up on the same cul-de-sac outside Denver, trading sticker books and sleepovers, secrets and fears. She was the bold one, lacrosse captain, debate champ, while I hovered in her draft, content to let her blaze the trail and throw me friendly smiles over her shoulder. College took us to opposite coasts, but by 28 we were reunited in Denver's booming tech scene, renting lofts 2 blocks apart and declaring we were soul sisters who just happened to occupy different bodies. I meant it with all my heart. Or at least I did, until the night I met her husband, Owen. Owen Kessler wasn't what childhood Leah had pictured for Cassie. She'd predicted a tattooed drummer, not a soft-spoken corporate lawyer, but the moment he shook my hand at their New Year's Eve party I felt something shift. He held eye contact a breath longer than polite, as though testing whether I felt the same jolt. I did. Over the next hours we drifted together like filings to a magnet, arguing about obscure craft beers, laughing at a private joke no one else heard, smiling across the room while the countdown blared. Cassie was radiant in sequins. I kept reminding myself she was the hostess, my best friend, the woman whose middle name only I knew. When midnight roared I hugged them both, but Owen's hand grazed the small of my back, a spark that lit months of kindling I hadn't noticed piling around my feet. January blurred into spring. Cassie launched a startup accelerator and began living in red-eye flights and donor pitches. Meanwhile, Owen and I discovered that lunchtime espresso in the lobby cafe turned into afternoon Slack jokes, then into quiet strolls home when she traveled. I told myself proximity bred familiarity, nothing more. But when he texted a photo of the first crocuses poking through snow, thought of you, stubborn beauty, my stomach fluttered in a way friendship couldn't excuse. Guilt flared, but I fanned it away with rationalizations. Cassie was happy, busy, distracted. I was keeping Owen company. One damp March evening, when thunder rattled the windows, we shared an umbrella and our shoulders touched. He took my fingers like it was the most natural act on earth. I should have pulled away. Instead I squeezed. Affairs rarely explode overnight. Ours was a fault line widening grain by grain. A late meeting became dinner for 2, a second bottle of wine led to a hotel lobby piano bar, and the rideshare home ended at his brownstone after the driver misinterpreted our shared address. We kissed under the porch light, frantic, terrified, thrilled. The door clicked shut behind us, the world outside ceased. In the morning I sobbed into his shirt, swearing it was a one-time betrayal. He stroked my hair and whispered that the universe doesn't make mistakes twice. By May, Owen had memorized the freckles on my shoulders, and I'd stopped calculating how many times I'd lied to Cassie, because counting hurt more than denial. Cassie returned from San Francisco flushed with success. Her accelerator landed a $10 million seed. She invited us to celebrate at a rooftop bar. I spent that night choking on champagne and shame, watching her glow while Owen's hand rested on my knee beneath the tablecloth. On the car ride home she teased that we'd become close friends in her absence. I almost confessed right there, but cowardice is a patient disease, it waits for the perfect moment to not speak. Instead, 2 weeks later, Owen told her everything. I arrived at Cassie's loft the next morning after a panicked call from him. She opened the door, eyes red-rimmed, face still, voice calm in a way that made every cell in my body recoil. "Leah," she said, "I'm so glad you came." She handed me a mug of peppermint tea, my favorite, and listened without interrupting while I stammered apologies. When I finished, she nodded, as though closing a spreadsheet column. "You know what I value most?" she asked. "Data integrity. Garbage in, garbage out. And lately my life's been fed lies." She thanked me for my honesty, hugged me once, and told me she needed space to chart a new model. The door shut quietly behind me. I walked down the hall shaking, blissfully unaware that her reckoning had already begun. Owen moved into my apartment the following week. The transition was messy, lawyers, lease breaks, whispered conversations about assets, but within 3 months the divorce was finalized in surprisingly cooperative fashion. Cassie declined spousal support and bought a minimalist condo across town. Mutual friends praised her maturity, and Owen assured me she would heal faster freed from the marriage's corpse. Still, when summer cooled into September, I realized I hadn't seen her once. Her social feeds, normally a carousel of brunches and boardrooms, went dark. She'd resigned from the accelerator, sold shares, vanished. I texted, emailed, called. Nothing. I channeled unease into planning our wedding, an Aspen lodge in late December, candles and fresh snow, a string quartet playing Clair de Lune. Owen and I honeymooned in Kauai, swimming under emerald cliffs and whispering vows sweeter than sugarcane. The island breeze felt like absolution. On New Year's Day, exactly a year after I first met him, we toasted to blank pages. I almost believed naughty chapters could be sealed by love's wax stamp. The first anomaly surfaced in February. My credit card company flagged unusual charges: diamond earrings from Milan, a four-figure donation to a political action committee I'd never heard of. The card's physical chip sat in my wallet. Fraud, the rep assured me, would be reversed. 2 weeks later my Apple ID locked 4 multiple failed access attempts. When I regained entry, half my photos were gone, and a new album titled Fickle Heart held only black squares. I shrugged it off. Cybercrime was epidemic. But a chill prickled whenever I remembered Cassie's college hobby, white hat hacking competitions she always won. March delivered heavier blows. An anonymous complaint alleged I falsified clinical trial data at Metatronics, the biotech firm where I'd risen to senior project manager. Internal audit teams ransacked my files. Though no wrongdoing emerged, the investigation delayed a product launch and cost the company millions. The board demanded a scapegoat. By month's end, security escorted me out with a cardboard box. Owen's old firm absorbed us on one salary, but tension seeped into our evenings. He questioned why misfortune shadowed me. I snapped that he sounded like the world's most expensive parrot repeating gossip. We stopped touching, then started drinking. April showers brought subpoenas. The SEC accused me of insider trading tied to stocks I'd never bought. Bank records, however, showed brokerage accounts opened in my maiden name months earlier, seeded with transfers from shell corporations that traced back, on paper at least, to a VPN in my apartment. My protestations tasted hollow even to me. Owen hired a criminal defense team, but I saw doubt flicker behind his eyes each time we sat across counsel's mahogany table. Someone is framing me, I insisted. But the obvious suspect had no motive, or so he believed. After all, Cassie had let us sail away unscathed. Right? On the first warm night of May, I came home to find our living room wall painted with a single line of graffiti in blood-red spray paint: "He doesn't know you like I do." Police filed a vandalism report and left. I scrubbed the sentence until my arms shook, but the outline ghosted through 3 coats of primer. Owen suggested we list the condo. I stared at the stain and realized I no longer recognized the space that was supposed to be our fresh start. Every doorknob felt like a sensor, every window a camera. We booked an Airbnb while searching for a buyer. Yet the horror followed. A week later, TMZ published screenshots of texts, real ones, from the early days of our affair, captioned "Tech Betrayal, Marriage Wreckers' Steamy Secrets." The article reprinted Cassie's wedding photo, cropped so that I stood beaming beside her in teal chiffon. Online comments described creative ways they hoped I'd die. Sponsors pulled advertising from a podcast I hosted on female leadership. Owen's firm placed him on leave pending reputational review. Our bank balance bled legal fees. Desperate, I hired a private investigator, Mara Quint, a former cyberforensics specialist. Within days she confirmed what I feared: every malicious breadcrumb pivoted through layered proxies, but the keystrokes bore the same signature, an elegant string-sorting quirk Cassie had once shown us over brunch, bragging it shaved microseconds off compile time. Mara warned it could be coincidence, code is communal. I knew better. Cassie hadn't vanished to lick wounds. She'd gone to sharpen knives. I drove to her condo on a humid June evening. The lobby guard said Miss Hartley had relocated to Barcelona in November. She'd sold the unit furnished, forwarding address unknown. I stood in the sterile hallway, heart hammering. Outside, lightning stitched purple across the sky. Something inside me snapped, not fear but fury. I wasn't a deer cornered by a wolf, I was the architect of my life, and I would not be dismantled piece by piece. I called Mara, instructing her to break whatever laws she must. Find her, I hissed. I'll pay anything. 3 nights later Mara met me in a deserted parking garage and handed over a slim USB. I cracked an archived Slack cache from Cassie's accelerator days, she said. Turns out she funneled money through a dummy venture capital firm in Estonia, registered weeks after her divorce papers filed. That LLC funds the accounts framing you. Proof, at last, and felony leverage. We hatched a plan to confront her publicly at the annual TechFront Summit in Seattle, where an anonymous donor had sponsored a keynote titled Decentralizing Redemption. Guess who the surprise speaker was? Cassie Hartley, billed as a thought leader on ethical entrepreneurship. July 15th. The ballroom buzzed with venture capitalists and journalists. Cassie strode on stage in a cream suit, hair chopped to collarbone, voice calm as snowfall. Innovation, she began, isn't about creating what's new, it's about correcting what's broken. I stepped into the aisle and shouted, "Tell them how you correct things, Cass." Gasps rippled. Security moved, but Cassie lifted a hand, queen commanding pawns. "Leah," she said, her smile warm enough for cameras, "I hoped you'd come." She invited me up, offering her mic. The audience leaned in, hungry. I flashed Mara's slides, bank transfers, shell corporates, IP addresses. The room blurred with popping phone lenses. Cassie listened, expression serene. When I finished, she asked, "May I rebut?" She tapped her tablet, screens behind us filled with new data, transactions from my primary checking account to an offshore fund, dated after Mara had supposedly acquired her evidence. She fabricated these, I protested. Cassie shrugged. Once a thief, always a forger. She looked at the audience. Pain makes some of us monstrous. It made me mindful. She closed with a quote about accountability, bowed, and walked off stage to thunderous applause. Security escorted me out. The next morning federal agents arrested Mara for cyber intrusions. Under threat of prison, she confessed to forging exculpatory evidence for me, forged under Cassie's remote direction, though she lacked proof. I was indicted for conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Owen emptied our savings on yet another defense team but refused to visit me in county lockup. 2 weeks later I received divorce papers citing irreconcilable deception. A gossip blog published photos of him dining with Cassie in Santa Monica, her hand resting on his wrist like a brand. Trial spanned autumn. Prosecutors painted me as a calculating mastermind, subsuming friends and foes alike to feed a fortune-hungry ego. My lawyers argued I was the target of a vengeful genius with deep fake prowess, but without tangible links to Cassie the narrative collapsed. I was convicted on 3 counts. Sentencing day, November 21st, the judge imposed 8 years, citing egregious breach of societal trust. As marshals cuffed me, I searched the gallery. Cassie wasn't there. Owen was, holding her coat. Prison time moves viscous and sharp, like honey laced with glass. I taught GED classes, kept my head down, and replayed our friendship on loop. Cassie hadn't only destroyed me, she'd curated my demise like performance art, each stroke precise, each reveal timed. I'd rewritten delta values in her life, she rebalanced the equation. Sometimes I admired her symmetry. More often I dreamed of her smile before I realized it was a barbed wire halo. 3 years in, a package arrived via legal mail, a paperback of The Count of Monte Cristo. Inside, an inscription, "Betrayal costs compound interest." No signature, but the handwriting was etched in my muscle memory, science fair labels, dorm post-its, a wedding guest book. I snapped the spine and screamed until guards threatened solitary. That night, alone, I opened the pages again and underlined every reference to justice served cold. Parole came early thanks to overcrowding and good behavior. On July 7, 2030, I stepped into Denver's sunlight, the same city yet utterly alien. Half my hair had gone silver. I rented a studio above a pawn shop and took dishwashing shifts, forbidden by conviction from any financial sector work. I spoke to no one from my old life, but I learned through whispers that Cassie's venture fund, Phoenix Rise Capital, had backed 3 unicorn IPOs. She graced magazine covers under headlines like From Ashes to Angel. Of Owen I heard little, though a mutual acquaintance said he'd quietly married again, to her. On a crisp October morning I walked past the art museum and saw a banner for a new exhibition, Curated Vengeance, Modern Femme Fatale. Beneath the title beamed a photo of Cassie, curator in residence. I bought a ticket with trembling fingers. The show featured mixed media installations exploring betrayal and retribution. The final room held a single exhibit. A mirror framed by shattered wedding china. At the base, a plaque read, "The price of stealing another woman's future is paying with your own." I stared at my reflection fractured into dozen shards, each one showing a different angle of my ravaged face. In that kaleidoscope I saw, for the first time, the full circumference of harm I'd set in motion. I left the museum at dusk, stumbled into Civic Center Park, and sat beneath a cottonwood whose leaves flared gold against fading sky. A lifetime ago Cassie and I had picnicked here, mapping dreams on notebook paper. Wind lifted a sheet of flyer from the grass. I caught it, read an ad for Phoenix Rise Scholarship Fund for Women in Cybersecurity. The irony tasted metallic. I folded the paper neatly and slipped it into my pocket. Revenge had already rolled its credits, but the story hadn't ended, just shifted genres. Somewhere inside those broken reflections lay a version of me who could step beyond victim and villain both. I stood, exhaled, and walked east, shadows stretching long behind, toward a horizon neither friend nor enemy had yet claimed.